Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heart lines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker. Our next guests are featured here every month on the third Thursday of the month at 11 o'clock a.m. Dr. Michele Sherwood is a trained doctor of osteopathy. She's an osteopath. Dr. Mark Sherwood is a trained naturopath. Mark and Michele use an integrated approach that focuses on prevention and lifelong wellness. The Sherwoods have a thriving medical practice, the Functional Medical Institute, and are recognized experts in health and wellness. In their 18 years of practice, they've helped almost 8,000 patients worldwide with an annual reach of over 1.3 million. Together, they've authored 3 books: Fork Your Diet, Master the 4 Fundamentals of Good Health; Surviving the Garden of Eden, a surprising biblical insights to enjoy optimal wellness; and The Quest for Wellness, a practical and personal wellness plan for optimum health in your body, mind, emotions, and spirit. You can find out more about them at their website, fmidr.com. Here to talk about the 4 aspects of optimal health are Doctors Michele and Mark Sherwood. So, docs, what's up, docs?
Hey, we're happy to be here. All those paths that you noted, at least you didn't put in there psychopath or sociopath. That was pretty fun.
How do you actually say that? Osteopathy?
Yes, osteopathic medicine, doctor of osteopathy.
Osteopathy. Okay.
Correct.
Osteopathy. If I put a dash in there, I'll be able to. I spend so much time teaching people phonetic Hebrew that when I see phonetic English, I can't do it.
Sounds to me like you're getting better at it, putting a hyphen in there.
I agree.
Yeah, I'm going to stick a hyphen in there, so it's osteopathy.
Osteopathy.
Okay.
Think short vowel sign there.
Osteopathy.
There you go.
Correct.
I'm going to put an AW in there. I'm going to make it real phonetic.
I love it.
So, how are you coming out of the COVID-19? Whatever you would call it, a conspiracy? Is it? From your perspective as medical professionals, I survived the polio outbreak. I survived, my goodness, more plagues and influenzas, and as I rapidly approach 70, I take a look at what's occurred in my life since the early 50s, and tuberculosis, you've been vaccinated for it, and still a leading cause of death around the world. And yet we don't hear anything about that. But this thing has taken on such an incredible life. What's your opinion on that?
Well, first of all, running a medical practice, we had to decide whether we're going to run in fear or in faith and have the spirit of power, love, and a strong mind. So, of course, we are following all of the medical guidelines of sanitation and protection and safety for each individual, but we also can't hide in a hole and expect to ever develop this thing called herd immunity. We have to have some sense of an exposure to this invisible enemy in order for our body to develop antibodies. And an example is we do not go around testing individuals that are asymptomatic for the flu. So we don't know how many people really contract the flu and become immune to the flu in a year's period of time because they don't show any symptoms. So this COVID is a lot the same thing. People come in contact with it, they're asymptomatic, and they develop an immunity to it and fly right through it. And then, of course, you have the others that are immunocompromised that end up in the hospital with serious infection.
So if you're struggling with heart disease and diabetes and you have other complications, then you're the ones that really need to be concerned. Now, in my case, at 68 and a half, I don't take any medications. I'm not being treated for any conditions whatsoever. Throughout my life, whenever they told me that there was something going on, I would say, what are the alternatives to medication? They said, well, you're going to have to drop some weight to get that triglyceride number down. You're going to have to take ice cream out of you're going to have to remove sugars from that's the triglyceride kicker. And so I said, okay, then that's what I'll do. And he said, well, come back in a month. I said, no, I'll come back in 3 months after I've implemented this, and that should be enough time to see whether or not there's a change, but I'm not going to take your prescription that you're going to tell me I'm going to be on for the rest of my life because I have no self-control. So that's really been my approach to medicine, and I have a good doctor that actually listens to me. We did baseline everything one time, and if I wind up in the hospital, then I'll have a baseline to go from, but I don't do the annual cardiogram, and if I'm walking hundreds of miles a month,
right,
and my step count is up to 15,000 steps a day, and I'm watching my diet, and I'm seeing definition in my body and tone and things like that, I'm not worried about now the inside, because the outside is a reflection of the inside. And I know that this is God's plan, and it's really for, a lot of people say if you knew then at 18 or 25 what you knew now, but I don't think that that's actually really a valid statement. I think that if you want to age well, there's things you can do in your 60s so that you will live out the rest of your life. You should try to start it earlier than that, but it's never too late to...
Agreed. I think that the expectation in our society today is that we get older and we get sick, and those two go hand in hand. That's just simply not true. That's maybe man's viewpoint, but it's not God's viewpoint at all. And you've done a great job of taking that particular thing that God gave you, which is this temple, and you take care of the thing. It's to us, all of us three, of course, it is normal, very normal, to walk around with, no medications, no symptoms, aging well, aging appropriately, building our immune system to be strong, our emotions and our spirits to be strong, and that's what we should be focusing on, everybody. And you can know that this COVID process has taken a life of its own. The narrative has been hijacked, and certainly that's taken away from the very things that we just talked about, the focus there. That's where it should be. That's where it's got to get back to, and that's what's going to bring our people to their highest optimal function.
As I read The Quest for Wellness, and as I studied your concepts of a wellness plan, optimum health for your body, mind, emotion, and spirit, Proverbs 11 was what jumped into my spirit, that a false balance is an abomination to the Lord. And I think that there's those people that go to the legalistic extremes. I still like ice cream, but I happen to now have migrated to the low fat, no sugar, 1 net carb per serving, and allowing myself 100 calories, maybe even 150 or 200 calories every couple of days, and not forbidding myself and punishing myself and saying, this is something I enjoy. I'm not a big dairy person. It's the only, and I don't even think it's actual dairy that I use, but I don't have dairy because I didn't grow up with dairy. I grew up in a family that Eastern Europeans aren't prone to drink the milk of another animal. That's you get to the Middle East and goat's milk and things like that, but that's part of your survival mechanism. But Eastern Europe was not like that, especially Hungary, where you have the hillsides and you don't have cattle, big large stretches of pasture land. But as people begin to look at their condition, how do you really strike that balance between the spiritual, the emotional, the intellectual, and the physical? because there's a balance there. There's also that Paul's statement that all things are lawful, but not all things are beneficial. Well, he doesn't enumerate which ones are lawful and which ones, or which ones are beneficial.
Well, it's funny, you mentioned that we talk about this like literally daily with people, and it gets down to this core concept: freedom versus bondage. Bondage is really being in bondage to a bunch of rules, and we could go into that all day long. I think everybody understands that. When you're living by a bunch of rules, restrictions, things you don't need to do, you're focusing on what to avoid, and all that. That's bondage. And I had a picture yesterday. It was on my desktop. I pulled it up. It was of a cupcake, and I showed it to a person, and I said, I'm going to teach you a lesson how to tell the difference between bondage and freedom. I said, give me the first thing that comes to your mind when you see the cupcake. Oh my God, it tastes so good. It's so awesome. I just love those things. And the eyes lit up. And I said, that's bondage. And I said, bondage says that I can't imagine going the rest of my life without having that. Freedom, on the other hand, is I can have that anytime I want. I can have a body anytime I want, but it doesn't lead me into the place where I have to have that. And of course, that addiction of food is really the same as the equivalent of addiction to alcohol or drugs, right?
Yeah, oh, exactly. And we use the concept of, this. People say, well, we should do the 80-20 rule. You can, cheat 20% of the time as long as you do good 80% of the time. And then the comeback is always, you don't cheat on your taxes, do you? You don't cheat on your business.
Yeah.
You don't cheat on your finances. You don't cheat on your marriage. Why would you cheat on your health?
Yeah. Just it's wrapping our minds around that concept of, like you said, appropriately balance. I mean, we have to spend time daily, growing our spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and physical persons, and that means that's intentional, that's aware, and it's having a plan to do it. With guidelines given from God, without bondage. I mean, Adam and Eve, for Pete's sake, didn't have a diet. They said, hey, you got all this stuff, man, have at it. God didn't tell them how much to eat or how little to eat or anything like that.
Where do we get some of these concepts? Because I see people getting bigger.
Yeah.
Just in general, my observation is people are just getting bigger. They're so much emphasis on weight that you either are shamed by it, and that sends you into feeding it,
Yes.
to then fear because somebody's telling you that your BMI puts you in the obese range. Now you're subject to, I can't, now this is just me, I can't imagine taking my body to the point where I have to become insulin dependent and develop type 2 diabetes, which is controllable. It's not my pancreas, it's not the Isles of Langerhorn or whatever they're specifically called that have been attacked by an autoimmune bringing on type 1 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is primarily controlled by diet and exercise. Is that a correct assumption?
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. It's we call 85% of your long-term outcome is determined by your fork curls. What's at the end of your fork and how many times you curl that fork every single day, plus the amount of activity that you get. And for the most part, in today's day, we are a sedentary person, even though we may exercise once or twice a day. We're not out plowing the fields. We're not out getting the exercise as our ancestral man used to get. Therefore, we have to consciously focus on, what's in the caloric load, what's on our plate, what's going at the end of our fork, and then how much activity are we really getting in the big scheme of things.
Well, and with that said, you mentioned the obesity crisis. I mean, clearly the obesity is the largest, fastest growing non-communicable disease on the planet. I mean, America, of all the obese people in the world, America holds roughly 20% of them. That's not okay. So we're trending in the wrong direction. And I think it boils down a lot to kind of what you said earlier, when Paul said everything in moderation. I think that has been used as a license to steal in a lot of ways. We've not, if everything's in moderation, that would mean you can cheat on your wife, you can cheat on your taxes, you can cheat on your jobs, because it's all in moderation. We have hand selected what we want to have in moderation, and we wanted to do it our way. And people have begun to put things in their body, as it truly happened to you, that can drive these biomarkers in the wrong direction. And practitioners, leaders, mentors, teachers need to do the very same thing that happened to you, to say, hey, this caused this, and therefore don't do this or consider not doing this. And there needs to be that partnership there, and there hasn't been that. And I think that that's probably part of the issue that's happened. We've lost that partnership in our health, therefore we're beginning to lose our health, and we really need to strive to get that all back.
From a osteopathic perspective, we're talking about bone chemistry, bone science. That's primarily your practice, is that correct?
An osteopathic medical doctor is an MD with the ability to manipulate the the musculoskeletal system. So not only do we do all of the medicine, we also have almost, it's an addition of hands-on medicine, with being able to do myofascial, craniosacral, high velocity, low amplitude, to adjust the musculoskeletal system.
So is it along the lines of a medical licensed chiropractor that goes deeper, longer, wider, using different techniques for the health?
Yes. I mean, I'm a medical internist, osteopathic with the sports medicine overlay. So not only do I do all the medicine stuff, I also do all the hands-on stuff with manipulation, similar to what a chiropractor does, but an osteopath has their own means of going about how we treat the skeletal system.
Okay.
I think the biggest difference is probably, the osteopaths have just like an MD, they prescribe medicine, they can diagnose and all that stuff, but they also have the ability to actually lay hands on people. That's why it's a really wonderful healing modality, because it doesn't neglect the touch. I think that's significant.
Well, and the reason I chose to be an osteopath is we are trained to treat the whole person, physically, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. And that involves getting into a person's life more than just that 5-minute visit.
Now, where would you find, because I can't think of a medical institution that adds the spiritual component to it when it comes to Jesus. I can hear the Ayurvedas, I can hear the meditationers, I can hear the New Agers, I can hear the Taoists and the Buddhists and the Zen implications of the medical institutions, but I can't hear the Jesus piece from any that I'm aware of.
You know, you gave a very great description of how we talk about the spiritual piece the other night.
Yeah, so we did a presentation the other night, and we, obviously, where we stand from, so as listeners, I mean, God is the great physician here, I mean, that period. But we did an analogy the other night to explain the spiritual piece that could really draw a nice bridge, and should be a bridge, and we explained that the spiritual person, everybody can relate to this. It's the essence of who you are. It's that ability to hear inside of you the yes and no, the stop and go. It's that inner voice. Everybody can relate to that. Now, in our position, we would relate that to, God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit. And I think if we begin to step out and say it like that, that gives us a platform to lead people into that, because you mentioned it correctly. We have completely removed the concept of God from schools, from hospitals, from frankly some churches. I mean, let's be honest here. And healing went out the window. And so we here are, everybody considers themselves unique, I guess, right? We all are. But here, I mean, we're going to go there because ultimately, why do people do what they do anyway? It's the physical symptoms that we both deal with is a manifestation. This is very important to catch. Physical symptoms are typically a manifestation of a spiritual brokenness. And that's a big deal because if we're spiritually broken inside of us and are not healed, we will behave in ways and do things that just destroy our health. And we're not talking just destroying physical health, we're talking emotional health as well.
When we look at this balance of optimal health, you make a very strong case for the fact that you cannot compromise one for another. You can't neglect one over another, that unless there's a harmonization of the four essential aspects, the spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and physical, that you are out of balance, you're out of adjustment. If we take a look at the manipulation of two hips, being out of line and repositioning so that they're taking that pressure off, and the sciatic problems that go with that, and all the related medical conditions. Why is it so essential that you not leave out one or another of these aspects? Can I just not eat healthy? And if I eat healthy, then nutritionally, I'm good. That's going to alter my brain chemistry because I'm not releasing certain endorphins, enzymes, whatever. The pituitary and the other glands, the adrenal system is balanced because of what I'm eating. I'm not having adrenal failure. I'm feeding properly, and so if I'm doing that, if I'm eating right, I'm actually feeling pretty good. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling pretty good physically. I'm feeling pretty good emotionally. I'm feeling pretty good spiritually. All is well with me and nature. We're in perfect harmony, and my mind's sharp. And I haven't paid it. All I've done is eaten well, and added a little bit of exercise, movement. I lived a sedentary life until I realized on Thanksgiving Day that all I needed to do was start moving.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think we go back to the life of Jesus. If we talk about balance, I mean, why did he heal people physically? Because obviously their physical infirmity or physical impairment was something they needed to be able to get free from, to hear the message of the gospel, the good news. Who is it that heals you? And I think on the other end of the spectrum in Jesus' life is look at the Pharisees. I mean, they were so locked into these things they couldn't see beyond that. So we can become out of balance on both ends. And I think the scripture that's really paramount to our discussion is Matthew 22:37-39. And it's Jesus said, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment." But then he goes on to say, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor, as yourself. And here you find all four aspects, with the heart. That's the essence of who a person is. The mind, which is your intellect and all that chemistry of the brain, your soul, your emotions. And we look at this self thing. How do we love people? We have to learn to get all those things in balance so that we can begin to love and serve other people correctly. Otherwise, we serve people from an empty well. And I have watched many believers on this note. We've seen this. They have it's kind of a subtle, I call it over-compassionism. They will give and give and give and give and give. With this concept of giving, they learn how to love the neighbor, but they forgot the comma. How do you get through that without loving yourself? So you got to find a balance so that we can be good fruit bearers while we're here, I think. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And if you leave one aspect out, it's going to leave a gaping hole, and eventually that house is going to fall in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think with these areas too, if you look at it from the, we live in the buckle of the Bible Belt here. I mean, we all get the concept of what it means to be spiritually healthy. Whether we do it or not, it's a concept, right? We all, I think, in America get the concept of emotional health. That's why there's so many counselors everywhere, And I think we all get the concept of intellectual health. That's why there's schools everywhere. You can go get a master's or doctorate anywhere you want to. And we all get the concept of physical health because of all the gyms, So this is not a surprise, but the bottom line is, clearly we've separated those things. And these are all part of life. And these are all part of living, and these are all part of optimal health. And isn't this what we're all supposed to be about? So yes, balance is the key, but I think we don't need to have these things, sort of independent. They are interdependent upon one another.
Well, that's what balance is. It's working in harmony and harmonizing the various aspects of your life and finding that balance that for each person it's different. And we are uniquely created in the image of God, but we're all given different gifts. We have unique DNA, we have unique fingerprints, we have, there's other parts of our bodies which are unique to us. The pupil of your eye is unique to you. No one else has your pupils. These are things that and the different blood types also play a factor in this. And why do we have different blood types? And do you need to have an understanding of that in order to know how your metabolism is wired? Because that's what's feeding your entire system. Is there one blood type that's a better nitrous oxide carrier than another blood type? I don't know, but these are questions that come to my mind when I start to think about the variables, because you do DNA testing, and what is it you're looking for in the DNA testing? We're talking with Dr. Mark and Dr. Michele Neal Sherwood. She is a doctor of, hold on a second, osteopathy.
Well said.
Well done.
And he is a naturopathic doctor, or naturopathic doctor. And they're co-authors together of the New York Times best-selling The Virgin Diet and Sugar Impact Diet, The Quest for Wellness, Fork Your Diet, Master the Four Fundamentals of Good Health, and Surviving the Garden of Eden. Surprising Biblical Insights to Enjoy Optimal Wellness. All those can be acquired. Just visit our website, ignitingnation.com, and click on their name, Dr. Sherwood, and it'll say, love the interview, get the book, and get them all, because you'll find that there are secrets in each one of them. One builds upon the other as they expand, as you become expandable, not waist size expandable, but able to grasp some of these concepts. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to continue this discussion about balance. And I think the operative word of today is balance. And we're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back. The Lord meets you right where you are, and so does Igniting Nation's new live streaming outlets. You can now watch Revealing the Truth, Revealing the Bible, and Prophecy Revealed simulcast live each Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on YouTube Live, Facebook Live, Vimeo, Periscope, and through our website, www.ignitingnation.com. No matter what device you are using, our program will automatically scale so you won't have to miss a single program. And if you happen to miss an episode, you can always subscribe to the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel and access over 1,000 interviews and never miss your favorite authors, special guests, and topics that interest you the most.
There are lots of ways to see Israel, but nothing compares to seeing the land of the book and the people of the book through the eyes of two Jewish believers who can take you on a journey that will bring the entire Bible to life. When you join Rabbi Eric Walker and his #1 rated tour guide, Edo Canaan, in Israel, you'll experience incredible teachings, first-class accommodations, and actually walk where Jesus walked. You will experience the Bible transforming from black and white into living color, and you will never see the Bible in the same way again. For more information, visit us at www.ignitinganation.com/events.
The Lord contends with what contends with you, and Igniting a Nation is committed to bringing to light each and every issue that faces a believer's life. Our live stream programming and teachings take you on a journey to finding biblical truth from a wide variety of experts who share their insights into a deeper walk with the Lord. We have assembled the most comprehensive panel of experts in the fields of prophecy, caregiving, healing from trauma, shame, and abuse, and so much more. We continue to expand our teachings and programming to meet your needs. We're committed to healing the nations with biblical truth. Visit www.ignitinganation.com to develop a deeper walk with the Lord and start your journey to a transformed life. The Bible commands us to study to show ourselves approved, but most study using Bible study tools and not actually studying the Bible chapter and verse. Igniting a Nation is pleased to present Revealing the Bible, recorded and taught each week before a live audience. We take you deeper into the actual Bible and verse in both Hebrew and English and connect the dots between the Old and New Testament. You can attend our 2 classes in Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, or watch the program every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time on ignitinganation.com and all our other simulcast outlets. For more information, visit www.ignitinganation.com/events.
Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Doctors Michele and Mark Sherwood, authors of Fork Your Diet, Surviving the Garden of Eden, The Quest for Wellness, and the New York Times best-selling book, The Virgin, with the foreword by the author of the best-selling Virgin Diet and Sugar Impact, J.J. Virgin, and they themselves are best-selling authors, and we're delighted to have them here with us on the third Thursday of every month at 11 o'clock to talk about wellness, which I think for every believer facing the COVID virus, facing diagnosis of cancer, facing diagnosis of heart disease, an aging population within the church, that we need to focus on living life out well. And that is their message. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate being here, and we know it's a worthy endeavor and a worthy cause right now, because we are more aware probably right now about the concept of health or not than we have been in quite some time. So as someone said to us recently, this message that we're talking about has been teed up perfectly for this time, and so just really appreciate the opportunity.
Well, we're glad to have you and glad to have access to your insights into this. When we take a look at the average diet, and I actually have a very good friend that's an internist who specializes in weight management, and that's where he's really focused his practice. And he showed me how to control carbs through getting my carbs all from natural vegetables, no processed wheat or grain products at all. And so that's what I began to employ on Thanksgiving Day. While everybody was stuffing themselves, that's when I began this journey, and I set a target for myself, and I've actually hit that target, and I've maintained it for this entire year so far, not fluctuated more than 1% on either side of it. And so I'm back to actually almost college weight, and stamina and strength and physique are all have been transformed. The only thing that's not changed is my hair color and the color of my beard. You know, I guess I could do something about that, but it's a crown of wisdom, so I accept it. As we look at people's response to the virus, there's a lot of memes out there that the post-COVID body, people responded to it in one of two ways. I used it as an opportunity. We didn't go off the air, so we were in the studio every day broadcasting. But the extracurricular activities that I might have done afterwards put me back in the home, where I wound up getting a little treadmill, a little small version of a treadmill, so that if I couldn't go walking, but there's 7.5 acres behind my house, there's a beautiful walking trail, and my dog loves it, so I made that a part of the routine. But what I found was that the key to it was having something that kept me accountable. And so there's an app on my phone, which is a health app, that tracks 3 major areas: standing, caloric burn, and exercise minutes. So calculated by steps walked. So your steps walked, there's a pedometer, and it ties to my watch. All right, and keeps track of that. And a minimum of 10,000 steps a day is going to get me. Now, what I learned from this was that when people calculate their caloric burn and caloric intake, that I was completely unaware that you have a resting metabolic rate where you have a burn going on that is whether or not you're eating, not eating, exercising, not exercising, you're burning while you're sleeping, you're burning while you're resting. There is a resting burn rate, and that it's the total of those numbers that really matter if you're looking to hit that 3,000 calorie to 1 pound of weight, is being able to look at that. And it's not as daunting as we've been led to believe, because people don't ever talk about resting metabolic rate and the fact that I burn about 1,500 to 1,700 calories a day at rest.
That's it. And a lot of times people, forget that our body takes ATP, that magical energy molecule created inside of the mitochondria in our cells, to be used as energy. It requires that ATP for our brain to function, for our mouth to function, for our digestion to function, for us to even sleep, to get up and move. There's so much to it. That is revving all the time, and I think there's so many factors that go into that. Where does the ATP get its material to be made from? Well, that's from nutrients, which are taken in from the mouth, generally speaking, and if they're broken down correctly, then those nutrients are transported through our bloodstream, through the cells, and into the mitochondria, where they can be used when combined with oxygen and make ATP. A lot of things can go wrong with that. So obviously at the beginning, if we don't put the right nutritionally dense food in there, or on the contrary, we put in food that anti-nutrient or has no nutrition, that's going to drive down our metabolic rate to give us more fatigue. So when a person goes more towards a whole food, the way God made it, sort of nutritional intake, well, invariably you're going to get your resting metabolic rate to increase, because it has material to build gasoline, and then you're going to feel better, you're going to do more. And so we measure that here in the office, our basal metabolic rate. I want to know what that is. And I hear that, as we age, that goes down, but we've seen the opposite. We've seen people be able to take it and move it up, even in age, despite the chronological aging process.
That's correct. And when a person changes their nutritional protocol to whole plants, whole foods, it changes chemistry. So calories in, calories out are not the same if it's fresh and raw fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, and good clean proteins versus calories from Snicker bars. So the calories in, calories out, you're going to get a much better caloric burn when it's whole foods versus sugary foods, because those sugary foods do something called produce insulin. And when the insulin levels go high, insulin is a fat storing hormone. So if those insulin levels are soaring out of control, your body can't get into a state to actually burn fat as fuel. So a person may struggle because their nutrition is not right.
It's interesting that we've seen this phenomenon occur. When people come in here a lot of times to us, and this is like you mentioned earlier, the obesity crisis. I mean, it's said to be normal to have excess fat now. We've made fun of this quarantine 15 and all that. That's not funny, because you are increasing visceral fat, which increases the chances of all these comorbidities we're talking about. You're just making it worse with that, and it's not okay. When a physical human being, that physical body, gets optimal, like yours is right now, Rabbi Eric, and I think you can attest to this, you will become fat gain resistant. Fat gain resistant. That is normal. That's very normal for the human being. It is abnormal to gain excess fat and retain it. That doesn't match our evolutionary properties. It doesn't match our evolutionary intent. It doesn't match the way our genes have sort of micro-evolved over the last 10,000 years, only 2% change, which is fascinating. So these genes we have today, I mean, you could say, well, they're obesity genes. Well, really, if they were obesity genes, why weren't they obese 200 years ago? It's because of this thing called the standard American diet lifestyle that has just crushed us, and it's been used as a crutch, perhaps, to say, well, this is normal. And you know, people like us, I mean, what are some names we get? You're radical, you know, you're
Freak.
You know, we get that. I'm like, come on, man, this is normal. I'm not, you know, I don't have to work at it, you know, too much, because it's natural. Kind of like you were saying, you just, what you do, you've used your technological sort of reminders, motivators to just pay attention and do what you've always supposed to have been doing, right?
Yeah, I've become one who watches the numbers throughout the day, periodically, when, especially like it told me I need to stand because I've been sitting. This is the second hour I've been sitting. Well, it says it's time for you to get up and stand. And in talking with Dr. Timothy Jennings, who's on the program prior, he's a psychiatrist, and we talk about brain chemistry, that standing actually elongates the telomeres in the brain by standing, which helps then delay onset of dementia and keeps the mind very sharp. My mother's 95, plays golf twice a week. People ask me what she shoots, and they say, does she shoot her age? I say, well, no, she shoots in the high 70s, low 80s. And they go, really? That's amazing. I said, yeah, if it's any hotter than that, she really doesn't like to play. So,
oh, that's good. I like it.
You know, the numbers do matter, but there are different kinds of fat. And I want to talk a little bit about that because I don't think people really understand that. Okay, you have the fats surrounding vital organs, and then you have the belly fat, if you will. I hear a lot about cortisol as being a stress hormone that is released by the body and causes you to store fat. Am I correct in this?
Yes, you're absolutely correct. You know, cortisol is a stress hormone that gets activated by the sympathetic nervous system, called the sympathetic fight or flight response. So when that is activated, cortisol is released. And cortisol, by its very nature, produces glucose, which is blood sugar, to have fuel for the brain and the muscles to run, fight, or flee. So if glucose goes up, what is produced? Insulin. So your body is going to immediately try to store that fuel that's being released that's extra in the fat cells. And a system with too high of cortisol all the time becomes insulin resistant, and that fat starts to stack on itself and become visceral fat, which will eventually make the liver fat, it will make the pancreas fat, worsening type 2 diabetes, and then increasing the production of fat, you know, globally and especially around the organs.
It's really about the visceral fat that's the problem, because it is in and around the organs, and we need to understand that toxins. We live in a toxic world with all these chemicals that are not even tested, that we're breathing and putting on in us and on us. Toxins are lipid lovers. They love to get stored in fat tissue if they can't get expelled. In any system that is accumulating excess fat tissue is going to also accumulate and store more toxins, and then that fat tissue, the visceral adipose tissue, the VAT, I guess we would call it, is going to increase pro-inflammatory signals. Therefore, we're going to get chronic systemic inflammation, which is a part and parcel of every disease process that we know today.
If I am at a good weight, BMI 22, well below the 25 marker, which puts you in the overweight, can I still have that? So I don't have the belly fat, but can I still have that organ?
Yes, in fact, we have a special body scanner here in the office that works by DEXA technology, and we can actually measure visceral fat. It measures whole body fat, just how much fat you have on your frame, plus it sections out how much visceral fat a person has. And the goal is to have less than 100 on the measurement. If you start getting over 100, now you're moving into insulin resistance, and if it becomes over 160, that person is at very, very high risk for all these chronic diseases, including heart disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and the list goes on.
And there's a condition that we see a lot of times, because people get so hung up and focused on scale weight, they begin to lose muscle tissue, and that condition of perpetual and continual muscle loss is called sarcopenia, and we see what we would characterize as this skinny fat. So a person has they might be small on a scale weight, they might even have a good BMI, but their composition is distorted with more visceral adipose tissue that's there that's still a danger, and little muscle mass. So that's why it's important to keep your muscles going upwards and maintaining as much as we can in life, because it increases mobility, of course, and stability. But also, the more muscle we can have, the more and better efficient we are with utilizing fat tissue as fuel. So it really works in a good tandem together.
If you were to tell somebody that to start this journey to wellness, okay, what are the first 3 steps that I need to take to begin my journey to a balanced wellness?
3 things that are really, 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 really simple. The solution to pollution is dilution. Get the junk out. Get rid of all the whites, the white flours, the white bread, the soda pops, the sweet treats. Get those things out and start going to fresh and raw fruits and vegetables. Then number 2, our body is dependent upon movement. We've got to move to get the blood flowing. We've got to move to keep the heart strong. We've got to move to keep the bone strong. So just start moving, even if it's 5 minutes a day, if you're a couch potato or somebody that just doesn't move. Somehow we got to get movement on board. And then managing your stressors. So here come, the spiritual roots, the emotional roots, those things that drive us to do negative behaviors.
Yeah, pretty simple. Those are real basic things, and if you just do one thing, eat one meal of vegetables is always good. Walk one time around the block. Take 1 minute to simply be quiet, and that doesn't take much time, but those little bitty baby steps like that will start perpetual successes that breed upon successes and better habits. And it doesn't turn the corner in 21 days, not when you're talking about lifestyle. It takes about 3 months, and you got to commit to that long, and people need to be aware of that, because we're bombarded with all this stuff that is counterintuitive to everything we talk about in this world today.
It starts the same way with the Bible. is you don't start out saying, okay, I'm going to read the Bible in a year. You start out by saying that I'm going to read a psalm a week.
That's right.
Or a proverb a week, a one-liner. Start somewhere where you can feel good about it. We are still people that walk by sight and not by faith. And the sight walk is you look in the mirror. The sight walk is you look at other people. Your sight walk is you look at these other examples. I can have all the faith in the world in Jesus, but if I have all these constant bombardment of reminders that I'm too heavy, I'm too this, I'm too that, I can't get, the doctor's telling you, and they're putting you on medications, and it seems that we are in a medication-induced world where Big Pharma has way too much control over the medical profession, who choose to just say, okay, well, the easiest thing for me to do is to write you a prescription, as opposed to sitting down with you and grabbing you by the shoulders and saying, listen, okay, you sit in a studio for 3 solid hours every day, and then you go sit at your desk and you book out interviews and respond to emails. Then you go home and you read 3 books. Okay? That's your lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's what you do, and then you teach at night. And so you stand for an hour and you teach, but you spend 10 hours of study for every hour of material that you produce. So you're constantly sitting. Now, how can you do these things and get active? So I've had to find a way to designate time where I'm just not going to be sedentary. And that was my starting point, and that was easy to do. Just get up. You stop sitting. Okay. There's simple steps. I think that we've overcomplicated it, and you can live well, and you can live into a ripe, productive old age. I don't think that you have to suffer your way through the senior years of life. We've been talking with Drs. Michele and Mark Sherwood, featured guests here on Revealing the Truth. Every month we get together to talk about the quest for wellness, finding the balance between the spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and physical, the biblical insights into what the Bible tells us about our bodies, what the Bible tells us about lifestyle, what the Bible tells us about how we think, how we eat, how we believe, how we handle situations, knowing that there's a link between what we believe and what we do are indelibly connected to each other. And if you want to live well, you have to eat well, you have to believe well, you have to think well. And it is not just good thoughts, it is thoughts where you bind your mind to the mind of Messiah, you bind your heart to the heart of Messiah, you bind your will to the will of Messiah, and you bind your body to his body, not his broken, but his resurrected, glorified body, and you can enjoy that kind of life. Visit them at fmidr.com. Drs. Michele and Mark, I look forward to seeing you right here next month on the 3rd Thursday of the month at the 11 o'clock hour for the next edition of Living Well with Drs. Michele and Mark Sherwood. God bless you both. Thank you.
God bless you.
God bless
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.